They say that those that can't do teach. And I believe that is true because I know a lot of teachers who can't do shit. And of course, I'm talking about myself here. So when it comes to doing stand-up comedy, it's just not in my cards, man. It's not my thing, you know? Like, I wish I could do it. I wish I could do it. So therefore, I can teach it, right? If I can't do it, I can teach it. So I'm deciding from here on out, I'm going to start focusing on compiling 100 tips for stand-up comedy. Now, here we go. Stand-up comedy tip number 1. You do not have to bring up how long you've been doing stand-up comedy because it removes a lot of the trickery that you can do on the audience when they're aware that they're in a situation where you're going to go up on stage and trick them if you tell them that you're doing comedy kind of thing. For example,
this is my first time trying out comedy.
So right there, I removed a lot of my power that I had on stage towards the audience without even realizing it by telling them that I'm about to do comedy and I'm about to trick them into laughing. And as Norm Macdonald says, a lot of his acts are about gossip and trickery. So don't give away that you're there to trick people. If you're going to share something about how long you've been doing comedy, maybe turn it into a bit like, oh, I've been doing comedy for 75 years and I'm 95 years old. And that gives me 705 years left until the Bible says I die, if the Bible is 100% true. So that gives me 700 years to clean up this act. You know, something like that. Make it funnier though. Have fun with it. Have fun with it. But don't bring up how long you've been doing comedy. Nobody gives a shit. Just make them laugh. Have a good time. Stand-up comedy tip number 2. Whatever you do, do not steal other people's jokes. That is not cool. That is against the rules, and it has happened in the past with people like Dane Cook, for example, when him and Louis C.K. just so happened to have the same bit where Dane Cook was like, oh yeah, I'm going to name my kid like 40 Fs. Go to your room. And Louis C.K. had it first, and he was like, oh, I'm going to name my kid something without vowels, Pin Singleton. And basically that whole thing blew up in Dane Cook's face, and Dane Cook got in a lot of shit for that. I'm still a big fan of Dane Cook, and I'm still a big fan of Louis C.K., but it happened. And as far as like that Carlos Mencia thing, there was that Carlos Mencia thing where he stole a couple jokes from Joe Rogan and all that shit, but it's one of those things, man. You do not steal other people's jokes. Sometimes lateral thinking does happen. One of the most hackiest things I ever did was went up on stage and I said, good night, ladies and gentlemen, first. And it just so happened that was a Robin Williams thing. And I did not mean to fucking do that, but it's a huge fuck up to do that. So never steal other people's jokes unless you're a man and you're going to tell Nikki Glaser jokes and get paid way more money for that because men usually get paid more money. Okay, I'm just joking around. Please do not steal anybody's jokes. And as far as that goes, it is a real bad social faux pas, and people will catch on and they will expose you if you share other people's jokes as your own. So do not do that. It's against the rules. Cheers. Stand-up comedy tip number 3. Let's take your act to the 3rd dimension. In this metaphor, we'll call dimension number 1, writing something down on a piece of paper and then being able to read it and find it funny. That is a perfect start. That's a good start. And then dimension number 2 is being able to say it out loud with timing and making it funnier that way. And then dimension number 3, what kind of gestures, what kind of motions can you make? What kind of, things you can do with your hand, whatever it is. Like, what makes it funnier? Like, there's a thing that Louis C.K. does in his, stand-up comedy special at the Comedy Store where he's already standing. And he does this thing where he makes a joke about a bat that's just standing there. And him standing there is funny because he makes that into his joke. Or somebody like Sebastian Maniscalco uses tons of physical humor. And physical humor goes way back in the day to the Charlie Chaplins and the Buster Keatons and the Fatty Arbuckles of the world and the Three Stooges, all that kind of stuff. So if you can add something that is physically entertaining as well, I say go for it. If you're doing a bit about shooting yourself in the head, do something unexpected. Fall the wrong way. Stand-up comedy tip number 4. Sarcasm is going to be one of the greatest tools in your arsenal as a stand-up comedian. If you look at all of the funniest movies in the world, they're just chock full of deadpan sarcasm and back and forth dialogue filled again with sarcasm. And as far as like some of the best comedians in the world, I'll just pick some like 5 of the best in the world off the top of my head that use sarcasm so fucking much you can just see it right there when they're performing. You got somebody like Jerry Seinfeld, for example, who uses the observational humor, and then his punchlines often have sarcasm tied into it. You have Jim Gaffigan. I love his food bits, and he's just a master of sarcasm. He has that falsetto voice that he goes back and forth into, which I kind of call the voice of reason. That is sort of sarcastic, but at the same time the voice of reason. It's weird. And then as far as like Nikki Glaser goes, for example, she became such a big household name after the Tom Brady roast, but a lot of her stuff was very, very sarcastic. And as also, you got Nate Bargatze. Nate Bargatze, one of the most sarcastic people in the world, like one of the greatest of all time because he's so fucking sarcastic. And then like the 5th like comedian that I'm thinking about that has like such a good sarcastic wit is obviously me. Stand-up comedy tip number 5. When it comes to going up on stage, go and be the genuine and true self. Like, be who you are. You know what I mean? Like, let Andrew Schultz be Andrew Schultz. Let Frank Caliendo be Frank. Let Whitney Cummings be Whitney Cummings. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be other people. You have to be yourself. And part of that is going up on stage and sharing the real you. So stick to the real you, and you'll find that voice eventually. As far as a quote that I made a long time ago that applies to this, always remember, I would rather be full of myself than full of anybody else. So go out there, go up on stage, and be yourself. Stand-up comedy tip number 6. Always make sure to keep your cool, because you are always just a few misspoken words away from being basically dragged off stage. Someone like Michael Richards knows what I'm talking about when he had his meltdown on stage there. So keep your cool. And as far as like my life goes and learning from my life, this one time, my friend Rami climbed up on stage while I was performing, and it ruined my timing. And like the dumbest fucking thing that I did after that was like, I swore at him. I was like, "Hey man, you fucked up my set," like while I was on stage. And then he gave me the finger while I was on stage. And then after he gave me the finger, I ran off the stage and I jumped on him right in front of the whole crowd. And I was like, "You fucked up my set, man." And then I realized that I overreacted when this friend of mine who wanted to climb up on stage, I could have handled it a lot better. Like, he wanted to play some drums for me while I was playing some comedy kind of music and working on my act there as well. So always make sure that you keep your cool when you're on stage, because cameras are rolling, people are watching, and people love to gossip. Stand-up comedy tip number 7. Exaggerate and hyperbolize, man. Like, for example, somebody like Sebastian Maniscalco will use over-exaggeration fairly consistently throughout his set. And even when he's disgusted by something, like in that one, It Ain't Right, when he's disgusted by that one adult hanging out at Harry Potter Land, and it's like, "John, it's time to come home, John." Stuff like that. There's just some extreme exaggeration in Sebastian Maniscalco's performances, especially in his physical movement. There's a hyperbole in his physical comedy. It's really awesome. And as far as like other forms of exaggeration, you got Rodney Dangerfield, or you got somebody like Frank Caliendo doing impressions of John Madden. That version of him doing John Madden is extremely exaggerated, just like anybody that Jay Farrow impersonates is extremely exaggerated. Like I'll try an impression myself here. This is an extremely exaggerated what you call it, Vito Corleone, right? It's like, I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. I'm gonna make you recycle things you can use, reuse. I fucked that up, but it's still like an over exaggeration is sort of what makes everything click, when in terms of the impression. Like if I were to do an impression of Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, like I saw a meme where he didn't know what crying was in the movie Terminator or whatever. It's like, I've got detailed files on human anatomy. What's wrong with your eyes? Like that's an over exaggeration, right? Like stuff like that. Stand up comedy tip number 8. Everybody bombs. If you're going to go and try to make people laugh, eventually you're going to have either a tough night, or maybe you're going to be unprepared, or maybe people are going to buy you a bunch of drinks before you go out on stage. Whatever it is, people bomb for many different reasons. And some of the most common reasons, like being unprepared, that you can kind of prevent by rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing. But as far as like the pros go, like even the pros have bombed before. Like there's a Bill Burr rant in Philadelphia. They say he bombed that night, but the way that he did the rant, I thought it was like he clawed his way back into making it funny for at least the people that have heard the Bill Burr rant. A lot of people love that rant and think it's some of the funniest material Bill Burr has ever had. So go check out that rant. And then one of the biggest freaking bombs I've ever seen was Nick Swartzen got way too hammered. And I love Nick Swartzen. Nick Swartzen is fucking hilarious. Like when he does his Gary Busey and Liv Tyler impression while he's on, the airplane in the story that he's talking about, like, he's one of the most brilliant comedians out there in the world, but he had that rough night because he had a few too many. That kind of shit can happen. But as far as like me bombing goes, I have bombed before. One of the main reasons I bomb is because I go there unprepared and I think that I can wing it, and I have done that before and it has worked out before. But the last time I bombed, I saw a woman that I had a crush on, and my heart started pumping out of my chest, and that's why I kind of like, I'll be better next time, guys. See you later. So everybody bombs. You just have to decide if you're going to keep going. Stand up comedy tip number 9: eye contact. Eye contact can invite more emotional connection between you and your audience, and also at the same time it can literally make the show for somebody. You know what I mean? Like I remember this one time I was at Rumors Comedy Club in Winnipeg, and Lachlan Patterson was performing, and I got up to go and use the washroom, and like the first thing he did was kind of make eye contact with me while I was going to the washroom, and he was like, "We'll wait," and like the way he did it and the way he brought me into his performance, he brought me into his show, it made me feel like a part of something that is going on at that time in the room. Like I was part of the performance because I needed the washroom really bad, I couldn't hold it or whatever, and Lachlan Patterson roasted me for it. And yeah, that eye contact does work well. In fact, somebody like Nate Bargatze is trying to, or it seems like he's trying to incorporate it into his live stand-up sets. I can't remember if it's like Your Friend Nate Bargatze or Hello World or whatever it is. One of the ones on Amazon, his special on Amazon. There's a certain camera angle where he'll look directly into the camera, which invites the people watching it at home towards being more connected with him. So eye contact while you're performing can literally go a long way. And if you're having trouble creating eye contact at first, One of the things that you can do that you can try to just ease yourself into is to blur your eyes if you need to, and that way you kind of simulate eye contact, but eventually learn real eye contact and it'll pay off. Stand up comedy tip number 10. You are a psychological vacation for these people that just want to escape their lives. Like they know they're coming to a comedy show. Your duty is to make them laugh. Your duty is to give them that psychological vacation into your material, which I hope is geared towards making them laugh more than anything else. It's more about being funny than it is about being smart. You're there to promote joy and tickle people's ribs and stuff like that. And when it comes to the pros, like a lot of the pros, like I'll use an example here, Zoltan Kazis. A lot of the pros like him, he has said before that he has people coming up to him after these shows saying, "Hey man, your comedy got me through a very dark time in my life." A lot of those pros get that because their comedy is so good and it's so relatable. So that's the kind of psychological vacation that you should provide to your audience if you can help it. And as far as like real life for me goes, like I have told Stevo that person to person there, I told Stevo that watching Jackass 1, 2, 3 is a lot like escaping and hanging out with the guys when you're lonely, right? It's a lot like hanging out with your bros when you're lonely. You just flick on that movie and it's like you're part of the gang for a bit there. So appreciate that your fans and your viewers and the people in your audience, they are coming there for an escape. So give them that psychological escape, make them laugh, and try to gear your set towards the hyper arousal of laughter so that it keeps going and becomes a contagious thing within the whole audience, that psychological vacation. Stand up comedy tip number 11. Comedy is a skill like anything else. And like any other skill in this world, it's going to take a lot of practice to get really good at this skill. So go up on stage as much as you can, write as much as you can, and record yourself and see if you find yourself funny or find a way to make yourself find yourself funny, and maybe that'll translate on stage the next time you go up on stage. Somebody like Rodney Dangerfield, for example, he wasn't the greatest of all time for his entire career. It was during the end because that's how long it took for him to get really good at it. Before, Rodney Dangerfield went under the name Jack Roy, and then eventually he figured out this sweet self-deprecating style that he left as his legacy today and became Rodney Dangerfield. Something like, "Whoa, I checked my family tree. Turns out I'm the sap." Or like, "Oh, my mother didn't breastfeed me. She told me she liked me as a friend," stuff like that. Very, very genius, Rodney Dangerfield. And it took him years to get that good at that. And as far as somebody like Chris Rock goes, he has a bit where it's like black people versus N-words. And for that bit, Chris Rock took years trying to perfect it, and eventually it turned out to be one of his funniest bits of all time. So it might take a while to find the funny. And as far as somebody like Nate Bargatze goes, I'm going to paraphrase the Nate Land podcast that they used to do. They went to 288 episodes, I believe. Basically, he said it takes a lot of time to get to a point where everything you say is funny. And we all know that Nate Bargatze has a way of anything he says can be funny. So comedy is a skill, and it's going to take real practice for you to get good at it. So practice. Stand-up comedy tip number 12. Don't shit where you eat. Now, when it comes to this metaphor for not shitting where you eat, maybe make yourself the butt end of the joke first. Now, you can go up on stage and you can have a 10-minute set about, just shitting on your girlfriend or whatever it is, and people could laugh. People might laugh, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's going to come off more mean when you're shitting on the people that you love and care about than it is if you were to shit on yourself. Like, for example, Louis Louis C.K., during his biggest time in comedy, he was going around on different podcasts and making too many jokes about his wife. He has said this before, and that resulted in contributing towards his divorce with one of his ex-wives. Or somebody like Rob Schneider, his latest comedy special, he actually shits on his wife like 50% of the time in that latest comedy special. And somehow they ended up getting a divorce right after his comedy special. Is that connected? We'll never know for sure. But Nate Bargatze has said he found that he gets a better response when he makes himself the butt end of the joke compared to shitting on the people that he loves. So that's what I mean metaphorically by don't shit where you eat. An idea of self-deprecation for me is while bringing up somebody I love and care about. Let's see, I'll bring up my father and I'll be self-deprecating like, in this joke. Like, for example, my father was a man of construction and he can build anything and everything except for my confidence. You know what I mean? Like, the butt end of the joke is myself, and me self-deprecating, like being self-deprecating is usually going to be funnier than if I were to make my old man the butt end of that joke, if that makes kind of sense. So don't shit where you eat. Stand-up comedy tip number 13. Work that jab, baby. Work that jab. Because at the end of the day, your punchlines kind of derive from the jab, which is the one-liner, right? So work that one-liner. I have a book right here. I'm going to pick a page at random. This book is called The All-American Joke Book by Bob Phillips. So this is a Bob Phillips joke that we're going to dive right into. So I picked a page at random. We got: conversation between Adam and Eve must have been difficult at times because they had nothing to talk about. That's a great fucking joke, right? Like the setup is the fact that Adam and Eve are the first two people to ever exist, is, you know, in the legend, the lore of it. And you know, as far as like couples go, like they love to talk shit about other couples, and that's sort of a reason they bond just a little bit, right? So that's a good joke. Another example of one-liner comedians that I love, they're Mitch Hedberg, greatest of all time in regards to one-liners. I love his bit there. Oh, I love an escalator, man, because an escalator can never break down. It can only become stairs. Or Stephen Wright is another master of the one-liner there. Like a good one-liner by Stephen Wright was, everywhere is walking distance if you got the time, which is another great joke. Brian Kiley is another great one-liner who used to work with Conan O'Brien. One of his one-liners is like, oh, I spent the day turning my son's room into an office. That ought to get him to move out, right? So like understanding the idea of a setup and then a punchline is going to help you create more jokes within your storytelling if that's the style of comedy you choose to go towards. Let's see, I have a one-liner that's like, oh, once I had a wife, we would go fishing, we would lay underneath the stars, and we would talk for hours and hours until her husband took her away from me. So work that jab, baby. Work that jab. Understand the fundamentals of setup and punchline. Number 14, crowd work makes the dream work. Now I got 2 points about crowd work I would like to make in this quick video here. Number 1, crowd work engages the audience, like the way that somebody like Matt Rife became so fucking famous from being the crowd work guy and doing all of his crowd work material and posting all that stuff online. That stuff was genius. Big J Okerson also has a really good crowd work special that he does. It's 2 hours long. It's free on YouTube. Go check that out. Crowd work really does help people engage in your performance. And a second part about crowd work that I would like to point out is sometimes people are going to be, you know, heckling you, or sometimes people are going to be loud and disruptive in the crowd. And once in a while, you're going to have to set boundaries while you're on stage. Like I once saw Brian Posehn live, and there was somebody talking in the audience, and he screamed, "Shut the fuck up right now!" And then, you know, he did his performance, and it was fucking legendary. It was legendary, and everybody listened to every word Brian Posehn had to say after that. It was a very good bit. It served very well. I've seen specials where Josh Wolf and Dane Cook both had to tell people in the audience member to settle down, relax. It's just a show, and these people paid for this show, so I need you to be quiet so I can perform. So those are two aspects of crowd work that you should always kind of keep in mind. You can, number one, engage with the audience and make that part of your comedy, make that part of your set. And number two, ask the disruptive people in the crowd to, like, hey, buddy, can you enjoy the show right now, please? Because this is a show. I'm performing right now. So always remember those two aspects of crowd work. Stand-up comedy tip number 15. Tragedy plus time equals comedy. Now, first of all, that quote dates way back to the days of William Shakespeare. It's in there somewhere. It's kind of in between the lines, but it was rebranded by such popular comics like Lenny Bruce and Steve Allen just back in the day, quite recently. And, one of my favorite Steve Allen quotes is pretty tragic if you think about it. When he got into a car accident and he died, just before he died, he said about the person that he got into a traffic collision with, what some people will do to get my autograph. Legend. And then when it comes to Lenny Bruce is, my favorite quote from Lenny Bruce is, life is a 4-letter word. Now, to me, that's very, very funny because it's satire about the most like pondered question, like, what is life? Why are we here? All that stuff. And he oversimplifies it by saying that it's a 4-letter word, right? That's so fucking great. But yet, tragedy plus time equals comedy. To me, that means that when something tragic happens, it's very relatable on a universal level. So you're going to be able to relate with the people that you're explaining your joke to. Like, you find the comedy within the tragedy, and because the tragedy is so relatable, people will be able to feel what you were going through while you explore the kind of levity that you can with them while you present the jokes with them. So always use that tragedy to your advantage, right? Tragedy will help you relate with your audience, and you'll be able to generate a joke from that tragedy, and people will be able to relate with you even more through the pain that we all go through as emotional human beings. So use tragedy. Stand-up comedy tip number 16. There is a time and a place to do comedy, and typically that time and place is in the comedy club or wherever your open mic is, or wherever you're doing podcasts, stuff like that, right? There's a time for joking around. Very rarely does bringing your abortion joke or your trans joke into a government building, very rarely is that ever going to pay off. So, I mean, like, there's definitely a time and a place. And Ryan Long has a really good joke in his special Problem Solved, where a guy who used to work at a restaurant said, yeah, you can't say anything anymore, and I recently got let go of my job. And then Ryan Long was like, where do you work? And that guy was like, I work at a restaurant. And then Ryan Long's bit was like, a little bit different though, like, he's a comedian and the other guy was working at a restaurant. So typically, like, bringing that style of comedy into your restaurant job, making fun of fat people that's like that are trying to eat, that's not going to make those people feel good. And there is a time and place. In fact, there's a really good quote by Joe List in episode 196 of We Might Be Drunk, hosted by Mark Normand and Sam Morrill. And basically, Joe List and Sarah T, they come on they come on to the show, the podcast, and they explain that if you take some of the quotes that are said in a comedy club and you take those quotes out of a comedy club and you just float them anywhere you want, sometimes people look like psychopaths for it because the joke is not for them, right? So it's like, there is a time and a place, and sometimes your joke will get taken out of context no matter what you do. Like, if you start posting a bunch of videos and stuff like that, what you joke about, people will be like, whoa, this guy's crazy or whatever. But typically, if you're just joking, right, there is a time and a place, so keep that in mind. Stand-up comedy tip number 17. Cut the fat and polish up your jokes to the best of your ability. If it's too wordy, then go ahead and throw out words and preserve the purity of your delivery in regards to making people laugh, right? Just cut straight to the chase. Last year I got to see Sebastian Maniscalco live, and that was at his It Ain't Right tour. And last year I got to see Mark Normand live. That was at his None Too Pleased tour. And they recently released those specials. The special Sebastian Maniscalco, It Ain't Right, is very good, very good. And the special None Too Pleased by Mark Normand is also very good, very good. And straight up, seeing it live, it was a little bit rough. It was rough around the edges. And then seeing the special that they came to, the final product that they finally came to, just to see all of that hard work that they put in polishing their jokes, it's fucking awesome. It is a true process. Like the way erosion cuts through a rock, you're going to want to round out all of the rough edges of your jokes. You're going to work on that. So work on making sure that you cut the fat. Another example of cutting the fat is when Bill Burr talks about a restaurant sign and cancel culture. He said that they tried to cancel this restaurant for putting a sign that had a joke on it, and the joke was, "We like our beer how we like our violence, domestic." And Bill Burr said, hey, that's the perfect fucking joke. There is zero fat on that joke, and you need every single word for that joke to make sense. That's how you want to round out your jokes, and that's how you want to make sure that you give the respect your material truly deserves by polishing things up. And yeah, cut the fat. Cut the fat. Stand-up comedy tip number 18. Give voices to animals and objects because it's funny, and if you do it during the right bit, it could make your audience and viewers laugh out loud. Like stand-up comedian Dana Gould, for example. During his special Perfectly Normal, he does this really sweet bit about owls in the middle of Massachusetts who have given up hope because the winter is so long, and those owls go, why? Why? And it's hilarious. That's hilarious, right? That's awesome. And another bit I can think of right now off the top of my head is Eliza Schlesinger. She does this really good bit about going to party with her girlfriends, and it's basically like juxtaposing her partying with her girlfriends and herding sheep. And she starts to make these sheep sounds for her girlfriends who get drunker throughout the evening. It's a really great bit. Go check that bit out. And I used to do this bit where I work in a senior citizen's home and I'm cleaning out this old lady's apartment, and I find one of her sex toys and I say, if this sex toy could talk, it would say, bleh! Something stupid like that. It was really rude and mean. I kind of threw that bit out, but I thought it was kind of funny at the time. It is what it is. But my point is, make sure that once in a while, if you can find a good bit for it, give voices to animals and objects, because a part of stand-up comedy and the art of stand-up comedy is defying realism and shattering expectations. And what is more defiant to realism and shattering expectations than making animals talk and objects talk? Stand-up comedy tip number 19. Know when to end your set. For example, if you're going to do an open mic night tonight, ask the promoter, how much time do I have? If the promoter says you have 5 minutes, then do a 5-minute set and politely get off stage. If the promoter says you have a 10-minute set, then do a 10-minute set, then get off stage politely, because there are other performers who are just as eager and willing and wanting to share themselves with the world in order to try to make people laugh, because it's who we are as performers, and it is really polite to do so. If there's 20 people on the fucking docket for people who are going to do stand-up comedy that night, if there are 20 people and each person gets like 10 minutes, that's like a 4-hour show. So I mean, stick to how long you have out of respect for your fellow performers and out of respect for whomever the venue is. For example, when I did Winnipeg's Funniest Guy with a Day Job, the performer at Rumors Comedy Club told me that I have 5 minutes. And at the 4th minute, they put a little red light that I could see from the stage, letting me know that I have a minute to wrap up my set. And I stuck to that. And it's a polite thing to do. It's a polite thing to do. It's part of your responsibility as a stand-up comedian. And what's an example of somebody like going nuts over that? Billy Joel Armstrong. I know this isn't about stand-up comedy, but Billy Joel Armstrong actually had this red light in front of him during a benefit that they were doing rock and roll for, right? And he flipped out like crazy, and then him and Mike Dirnt and Trey Cool, they all started smashing their instruments, and Billy Joel Armstrong was all prima donna like, I've been in this business for 25, 30 years, man. I'm sick of this shit. It's really good. It's really good. Go check out that flip out, but stick to your allotted time. Stand-up comedy tip number 20. Be silly. Silly is king is what Rob Schneider said in an interview for GQ when he was explaining all of the characters that he has been throughout his acting career. And he's 100% right. Silly is king. Like when him and Adam Sandler get together, it's always something silly, but super fucking hilarious because it's silly and silly is king. For example, here's a silly joke that I came up with. It's really dumb, it's really stupid, but it's silly, right? It's silly. A silly goose walks into a bar and says, quack, 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 quack. And then the bartender says, oh, that's a silly goose. He thinks he's a duck. I don't know. I found that funny when I was younger, right? Like I thought that joke was kind of funny, but it's silly. It's supposed to be silly on purpose. And if you're looking for a way to increase your funny quotient and make more people laugh once in a while, do not be afraid to be silly. Stand-up comedy tip number 21. Surprise, motherfucker. Okay, that was a quote from Sergeant Dokes in the show Dexter. Really great show. Check it out sometime if you haven't seen it already. Everybody knows what Dexter is, I hope, I don't know. But when it comes to surprise, motherfucker, how does that apply to comedy? Well, you're going to have to set things up as though you are dragging somebody to their own surprise party. Like, you don't want people to figure out that they're about to be tricked into laughing. You want to set it up without that giveaway. You know what I mean? You don't want to give away that you're about to have a surprise party or anything like that. So when you're doing a joke, you got to make sure that it kind of puts a carpet underneath these people so that you can pull that carpet right out from under them without them kind of, catching on. Like, for example, one of the jokes that I did was like, oh yeah, my girlfriend's pregnant. Woo! Yeah, this is our first together and I cannot wait to drop her off at the clinic. This is our first abortion together because, we're not ready to have kids. Something like that. Like the setup is that I'm so excited that we're having a baby is what it seems like. I'm so excited. I'm flying off the handle. And then I go and destroy the expectation and pull the rug out from under people by saying that I'm going to drop her off and we're going to get rid of it. Right. So yeah. Be surprising. Pull that rug out from underneath people and have a good time. Surprise, motherfucker. Stand-up comedy tip number 22. Shock value is a tool for the comedian, a lot like sarcasm and irony and hyperbole and stuff like that. So don't rely on it 100% of the time, because shock value, I feel, is best saved for moments like if you need to deal with a heckler and you say something like, well, I can see the coat hanger nicked you a bit, or something like that, because that's implying that their mother went for a homemade abortion and tried to get rid of the baby or something like that, and it nicked the heckler and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, save your shock value for when it makes the most sense to use your shock value. It's it's great that some comedians can totally just fly off the handle and do abortion joke after abortion joke or whatever, but a lot of them use tact. For example, I saw Sam Morrill in Regent Casino last year, and he's one of those really cool comics that's kind of like a bro dude kind of guy, and one of the cool things that he does, if he finds like a crowd is a good crowd, he'll kind of reward people with abortion jokes kind of thing. So I mean, like, use a little bit of tact when you're doing shock value jokes. Like a shock value joke that I have, I don't know if I can tell it properly anymore, but I used to have this in my arsenal here. It used to be like, oh yeah, my girlfriend and I, we went to the abortion clinic, and when we went to the receptionist screamed at me. She said, "Ah, one of the abortions escaped, grew up, came back for revenge. And then she chased me around with a vacuum cleaner until I died." You know what I mean? Like, save the shock value for when it is the most useful. It's a tool. Use it when you need the tool. Stand-up comedy tip number 23. Acting lessons are a good idea. By all means, go out there and find a teacher or a tutor or a drama coach, whatever it is, and try to learn a bit more about acting, because it's going to help you in the long run present something to the crowd that you can destroy the expectation for. For example, like, there are tons of actors that wish they could be stand-up comedians, but as far as like stand-up comedians go, stand-up comedians are naturally like actors. Like, what's a good example there? Like Kumail Nanjiani, very cool guy. The Big Sick, such a good fucking movie, dude. Go check out Kumail Nanjiani, The Big Sick. But my point of bringing up Kumail Nanjiani is that he does this really sweet bit in his stand-up comedy special where he is like, oh yeah, it's very important to me that you understand that I'm a stand-up comedian / actor and not an actor / comedian. And yeah, that's where he started. Those are like, his roots are stand-up comedy in like Chicago or something like that, but before he moved to the Big Apple, right? So it's like, acting lessons can only improve your act. It's called an act for a reason. So go out there and get as many acting lessons as you can. Stand-up comedy tip number 24. Try to find a way to stay in shape as best as you can. The way they say that doing a pull-up can be the difference between life or death kind of thing, it's similar to doing stand-up comedy in this sense that being in shape could mean the difference between your set being alive and your set being flat, right? So like, go out there and do some cardio and shit like that. Like, for example, when Louis C.K. was doing his big On Top of the World thing there, he was always doing cardio, is what he said on the Joe Rogan podcast that he worked with. Or like somebody like Matt Rife is always in the gym working out and trying to maintain his health as best as he can, so that when he's on stage, he can perform to the best of his ability. So go out there, hit the gym, whatever you got to do, you know what I mean? Drink lots of water, get plenty of sleep the night before. Anything you can do to push that small edge of being a better performer, do it. Stay in shape. Stand-up comedy tip number 25. Perseverance. Now, when it comes to this kind of career choice, or if you're just having fun with it or whatever, when it comes to this kind of stuff, you expressing yourself is going to piss off a lot of people, because a lot of people have PTSD. If people have PTSD, that means that some of the things that you say might trigger them and they might hate you for it. Like, for example, like right now, I have people watching me going like, oh, I fucking hate this guy, man. I'm so sick of this guy, man. Stuff like that. And it's like, those haters are taking their own poison by watching me in the first place, but at the same time, what pissed them off in the first place was something that I said that was truthful. For example, like I know why I got framed. It's because I was too honest about what really happened, and I was 100% truthful, but I have haters because of it. And my point about that is, if you express something truthfully, and you're going to, when you dive into the realm of comedy, when you express something that is truthful and you push that small edge to make it funny or whatever, you're going to piss off a lot of people by triggering their PTSD and things that happened to them way before they ever met you, way before they ever knew you existed. So it's like, it's not your fault that people are going to react in a hateful way when you make a joke that isn't part of their beliefs, or if you make a joke that triggers something that, hurt them when they were younger, like that hyper arousal and kind of stuff like that. So it's like, you gotta not give a shit what other people think, and you gotta choose to have perseverance through all of the haters, and you gotta do this for yourself, because that's what it's about. It's about making people laugh, but at the same time for yourself. Perseverance.
Stand-up comedy tip number 26, choose your mentors wisely. As in, I like listening to a lot of Jerry Corley, so I can see a lot of a lot of his terminology and the way that he speaks in my stand-up comedy compilation and stuff like that. And I completely acknowledge that. And I just wanted to say how much I respect how many teachers there are to learn from online and stuff like that. Like there's a couple of really good podcasts about learning stand-up comedy. So there are always resources as well as actual comedians themselves or books and material that you can reference, like Steve Martin. Steve Martin's Born Standing Up is one of my favorite books of all time, and that is the number one book that I would recommend for anybody who wants to become a wannabe stand-up comedian. And that's where I am, really. Like I'm at that wannabe level, but yeah, I have a lot of good mentors though, so I understand the art to a certain extent, and I hope I can learn it one day. Stand-up comedy tip number 27. You're here to play politician. You're not here to play politics, but you're here to play politician. If somebody asks you something in the crowd, have an answer ready to go like you're a politician and make people laugh at the same time. This time, people want you to be full of shit, whereas in real politics, when people are full of shit, people get angry. In stand-up comedy, when you act like a politician with all of the answers, it can come off confident, and you need to do that in order to entertain such a large crowd. Stand-up comedy tip number 28. Superiority is fun to use. Like, for example, somebody like Ricky Gervais likes to play so out of touch that he gives somebody $1,000 for a jug of milk because he's so rich and famous that he doesn't know how much a jug of milk is, and it's awesome. And then there's people like Anthony Jeselnik, for example, who says something like, San Francisco have the most beautiful women in the world, and I say that despite what's going on in the crowd here tonight. Stuff like that. So punching down is funny, and there's a time and a place for it, and part of punching down is superiority, and for some people that is a really strong laughter trigger. Stand-up comedy tip number 29. Make sure that you watch a comedy special every day, even if you have to rewatch one, until the day you die. Stand-up comedy tip number 30. This is the ending. That's all I know about the art of stand-up comedy, and I learned a lot of it from basically the comedians that I watch, and basically the teachers like, Steve Martin's book, or any George Carlin book, or even Norm Macdonald's book was kind of a learning lesson, because I thought at first it was going to be an actual biography of his, but he just made up a bunch of fun stuff, and that's very Norm, and I like that about Norm Macdonald. Which reminds me, I mentioned him at the beginning, so always have a callback, and when you're ending your set, always make sure that you end on one of your more unbelievable jokes. Like here's a joke about my real life. I have the world record for most marriage proposals in a row to my 3 baby mamas, and the Guinness Book of World Records still owes me $1 million. Thank you, everybody. Good night.